Welcome to the Boy, Girl, Mom, and Dad podcast. It's just Mom this week. It's Lauren, and I am super excited for episode 52, Finding Joy in Motherhood with Hannah Morrison. Welcome, Hannah.
Thank you.
Boy, girl, mom and dad here for the good times and the bad. From gender norms and stereotypes to making sure that the butts are wet. Boy, girl, mom and dad want grown-up time, you're going mad. It's a trip, but we'll guide you through with tips and tricks for boys and girls too.
It's so fun to have you here because I've known you for over 10 years, so I've seen you in all the phases, but I haven't gotten to sit down and chat with you in a while, especially since moving to California.
Yeah.
But we have known each other since the Dallas influencer scene kind of popped off, which was a long time ago, and then we have
back in the day,
which is so surprising that I didn't have your phone number, because funny story, I was like, Hannah, can I just text you? And she gave me the wrong phone number. I'm not sure if she wants to be here today. I texted somebody else.
Harder to type.
I know. The person was like, I'm sorry, ma'am, I think you have the wrong number. So at least they were nice, and at least they responded. I'm just glad the person was nice to me, because they could have just not responded, and then I'd been like, oh wait, she's just busy. Oh.
Or she ghosted
and then I would have felt bad following up, because obviously I'm so grateful that you're here and using your time, because I know our time is precious. But I feel like I've known you for most phases of your adult life, and I'm so excited to talk more about motherhood today. So welcome, Boy, Girl, Mom, Hannah.
What up?
Yeah, and so every episode I usually start out with a Tiff, and it's something that we could disagree on, or maybe other people might disagree on, so I tailored this one to you.
Okay, great.
True or false, Lauren Graham is better in Parenthood than in Gilmore Girls?
I've never seen Parenthood.
Oh my gosh.
I know. I am Gilmore Girls through and through.
You
so
are.
Everyone tells me I should watch Parenthood though, but I'm so connected to her as Lorelai Gilmore. I just don't think I could do it.
Well, I have to say Parenthood is really, really, really good. I watched it live. It was in the era of I was at my freshman year of college, and that's when the show started.
Mhm.
And so it was one of those that I watched, and I think I watched it on Hulu, on my laptop computer, in my dorm room.
Yeah.
It's so good. And confession from my side is that I recall when Gilmore Girls was on, but I didn't watch it
I
growing
didn't
up.
either.
Oh my gosh, okay. That's so funny. So when did you watch it?
I actually watched it when I was working at Circle 75.
Mm.
So Paul and I were newlyweds, and everyone was talking about it. I was like, okay, I wasn't allowed to watch it when I was a kid. My parents weren't super strict, which is really funny. She just didn't really like it, so I wasn't really allowed to watch it. But I remember my sister would sometimes. And anyways, we would I would drive home late from events, and we would watch an episode together. And so I watched it in my adult life for
That's
the first
so
time
fun.
ever. But
Yeah.
I've watched it through so many times now.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's so funny. Maybe I remember you saying that now, but I didn't watch it until now I feel like we're in the age of there's so many shows, there's not first of all, there's not as much time to watch TV, but second of all, there's so much on, it's kind of overwhelming, because there was a time when I watched Gilmore Girls all the way through, One Tree Hill all the way through. I don't think what else. Oh, Dawson's Creek all the way through. Sabrina the Teenage Witch all the way through. Which I did grow up watching Sabrina the Teenage Witch, because it was
I did too.
the 30 minutes show that was on maybe when I came home before I did my homework. And I didn't have cable growing up, so we got cable when I was in high school, and I remember because it was around the time of High School Musical that came out.
Yes.
So I watched a lot of other shows besides the quote popular ones at the time. That's so funny. You should I would say watch Parenthood, but I know that you're so connected, but I will say Parenthood's very good.
Yeah, she speaks I read her book, and she loved being in Parenthood and speaks really highly of it. So
I just felt like it was really, it had a little bit of everything to where it felt more like a normal family. Not that Gilmore Girls doesn't.
Right.
But it's just a different little thing. It's good. Well, I expected you to be like, no! And that's not what happened. Which is fine. I love a surprise. I was the one who was surprised. So whenever I first thought about having you come on, I wanted to because I felt like we had a lot of similarities. From loss to invisible diseases and motherhood. And I find you have this unspeakable joy. And so I wanted to chat with you today to hopefully inspire others and let them in on like why you have your joy. So you're a mom of three kids, earthside, to Knox, Rory, and Chloe. What is your biggest piece of advice raising them in a godly way? And do you have any favorite books or methods?
I love that question. I don't know if I have I don't really have a method. We believe if they're old enough to ask the question, they're old enough for an age appropriate response. And so sometimes we're a little shocked at the questions, but we're like, wow, we want to give them the response and we don't want the world to tell them whatever the response
Yeah.
to that would be. And so kids hear stuff so early now. And so that's kind of our motto in general. And then as far as like creating a godly environment, they're pastors' kids, so they're part of everything. And we've always invited them in, and we'll never force them to do anything. We want them to like feel like their faith is their own and not been forced on them. And so
Yeah.
we're never gonna be like, you have to stand up and raise your hands and worship. You have to do this. You have to do that. We kind of just like invite them in and welcome them in and pray out loud. Like when we're walking to school, I'll be like, can I pray over you? And they might just kind of be like, oh yeah, sure, whatever. Or some days they're like, yeah, can you pray about this for me? And so it's just like a very natural integration into our home. We don't like sit down and do like a Bible study. It's more of just like conversations, and we ask questions, and it's kind of just like normal dialogue throughout the day that we talk about the Lord. And again, no questions are off the table about anything.
I love that. I feel like it allows them to see it in application, which is one
Mhm.
thing. It's obviously good to sit down and have a Bible study or read your Bible and all that stuff,
Right.
but especially with your kids, they're learning so much. So seeing it in action is how they apply it. Because it's just if it's just you sit in a circle and you read a Bible together and you're not actively doing it, it's not going to stick as much, and then it just stays in the circle.
Right.
So I really love that. You talk about it openly on Instagram, but I also wanted to bring up your daughter Blakely. And I wanted to say or ask, how has your daughter Blakely shaped you, and how does it affect your parenting?
Yeah. It's kind of, again, it's something we talk about really naturally in our home. Knox is 4 when I was pregnant, and then we lost our baby Blakely at 14 weeks. And so for 14 weeks, she was part of a lot of conversations in our home. And so we really talk about it a lot. And I think personally, as a woman and as a pastor of people, it's really broadened my perspective and my ability to empathize with people. Before I had lost a baby myself and grieved like a for real grief, I would say that was one of the first things that's ever happened in my life that was really, really hard. I've had difficult seasons, but that was the first thing that I was like, holy crap, like this is really hard. And it really broadened my empathy. Like before, when I had a friend who lost a baby, I would cry with them, but it was like, oh, I feel sad for them. But once you've experienced it yourself, it's just totally different. It's, and now navigating even like cancer with my dad, there's like, you had an empathy for people that were going through something, but once you've experienced it yourself, it's just like a completely different perspective and ability to connect with people. And so in some ways I'm really grateful for that. Like obviously I wish that never happened to us. But I do think that I'm able to connect with our people that I have the opportunity to pastor in a very different way. And then I think with like Knox, particularly, Rory was so little, but Knox, honestly, like I think Paul and I and Knox all have a very different perspective of heaven that had never
Mm-hmm.
really been a conversation before. I've never, until recently, never lost a family member. It was like, it was such a far off conversation. And now heaven is like so for real to me in a way that just wasn't before. I don't know. It's just very different. And I think that impacts us a lot.
No, definitely. And I feel like um, just even obviously it's with people it can help you in your circle, but I feel like even just sharing your story like you do on Instagram, maybe someone's not ready to talk about it, or they just stumble upon your story and they feel seen in a way. I feel like it's very obviously I guess what's coming to mind is like God makes everything for good, and like
Absolutely.
using that to your story, if it touches like one person,
Yeah.
is just such a blessing in their lives.
Yeah.
Another thing that you talk about, or you've talked about frequently, is you were recently diagnosed with fibromyalgia, and you posted that you were happy about it because it was an answer and you now know like what to do. I know it's recent, but do you have any advice for those who recently got a diagnosis too? Like what you would suggest
Yeah.
for them?
Gosh, if I can say like anything, like my blanket statement is if you know something's wrong with you, you know something's wrong with you, and advocate and fight for yourself until there's an answer. And I literally started seeing doctors when I was like 12 years old. I would go sit in a doctor's office with like literally like a list of weird things I know isn't normal. And now looking back, I'm like, oh my gosh, like I was so in tune with my body at like such a young age. And I would just go and I would be like, hey, here's all these weird things. Like I have this weird rash and like just weird stuff. And I was basically like chalked up to being a hypochondriac as a child, which was really difficult and definitely impacted me. I pretty much like won't go to the doctor. I get hospitalized because I wait so long when I could have just like gone to the doctor for whatever, you know, and but it's because I'm afraid of going in and someone telling me nothing's wrong with me. And I hate that for myself and I hate that for other people because I know that is the case for a lot of other people. But there are really, really good doctors out there, and you just have to advocate for yourself and find the right doctor who wants to figure out what's actually wrong and not just call it something, give you a medication. And I'm like very grateful for modern medicine, but I also believe that modern medicine mixed with what God's already provided for us really is once you have an answer, you can do so much work to get as aligned to the way our body should be as possible on this side of heaven. So, yeah.
And I asked this also because I was diagnosed with ulcerative colitis in 2020.
Yeah.
And so I try to use the phrase of like, I'm healing from ulcerative colitis. And I think like I'm on medication for it and I don't want to be on it. Like, obviously, I'm very thankful for it.
Right.
The first round of it that I had, the medication worked amazingly. And then I didn't go in, like, because I got pregnant. So I didn't go in for another colonoscopy until about, I guess, almost a year after I had
Wow.
the twins. And it was just a very stressful year. Both, obviously, I had twin newborns, but like outside of
Yeah.
that, it was a very stressful year. And
Yeah.
so that's when I first learned, I guess, maybe first learned physically in myself that, stress can have such a hard impact on your body. And I think because of the stress mixed with a couple other things, I had another flare. So I got another
Yeah.
part of my colon. And so, like, I don't want to be on it forever. I'm
Right.
thankful for it. But the newer medication for the other part of my colon, it's not the same because it doesn't, I don't have to get into the details of what all
Right.
my colons, but I don't want to be on it forever. And so like I do try to, like fix my food and like, minimize stress and exercise. So there are so many things that you can do. Even though I recently had a conversation with a nutritionist. It was something I always wanted to do, but I was like, I don't have the budget for that right now. And she
Right.
was like, you need to add some of these and or this in. And I was like, but that's not as fun as eating chips. And she
Yeah.
was like, touche,
It's
touche.
true.
But I think once you get in the mindset of, or even just in the habit, like your body craves other things, and food can really, really be medicine to
Yeah.
your body.
Yeah. It's so true.
Um, how do you, speaking of food, leading right into it, how do you feed your family? I know that y'all have different dietary restrictions.
Yeah.
And do you ever feel like the people who don't have the other dietary restriction are ever like missing out?
Yeah. I don't. And I don't know. I actually am really grateful because I feel like a general understanding and education of our lack of quality of food in America versus other places is becoming like less like crunchy and more just like
Yeah.
it's just fact. It's just true. Like
Yeah, I mean,
I
living in
tell my son,
California, I'm like, please take the dye out of Skittles. I don't want them there. I
yes.
don't care. Like,
Right. Because, like, literally, other places, I tell Knox all the time, like, he loves Doritos, and we stopped eating them because I'm like, this has red dye, yellow dye. But, like, over in France, he could eat Doritos because they have, like, real cheese. I'm
yeah.
like, literally, why are we even having this
Yeah.
conversation? And so, yeah, I know California is discussing changing a lot of the laws. And then Texas, there's a few other that are to follow. And I just think it's so sad that's even a conversation. Like it should
I
have
know.
never been allowed in the first place. But yeah, I mean, honestly, I think that helps us feel a little less weird because it is more of a normal conversation across the board for everybody. And then my husband and I both eat gluten free. I'm by choice. Or I'm by force. He's by choice. And then he has a casein allergy, so he can't do dairy, but I do dairy. So I just often will cook like pretty clean, always gluten free. And then if we have something with cheese, I'll make a side of it that doesn't have cheese for Paul. But in general, I feel like we just all eat really clean and really well.
Yeah.
And we're very balanced though too. Like my kid had a blue dye cookie last Thursday because it was someone's birthday.
Yeah.
And I have a lot of, I don't know, I think also ever since my dad was diagnosed with stage 4 cancer, that's also been very like, oh, bad food feeds people that have cancer in their genetics. And so I'm definitely even more aware of it now, and pretty strict, but I also let my kids have fun and be kids. But I mean,
Yeah.
I
Did
don't
you
know.
see
It's a
did you
weird
see
tension.
did you see that they are changing the name of the dyes?
Yes.
That's so
Which
annoying. If you are
that literally should be illegal, but whatever.
if you are listening and you're like, I don't know what you're talking about, they're basically now you can mostly look at things and see like red 40 or blue. I don't remember what all it are
Yeah,
specifically,
yeah.
but red 40 for sure. And they're changing them to be a different name. So
And
it's
they're
just
like
a,
happy sounding. It's
yeah,
like I can't even remember. It's like I literally can't even remember what it was called. But I was like, why are we making these sound like child crayon colors?
yeah.
Like it's
It's
ridiculous.
insane. Last week, I took Cypress to get his haircut, and both kids were with me, and they have a lollipop, and I usually am like, no, we have more at home because I buy the Yum Earth ones or whatever
Uh-huh.
that don't have the dyes. But I was like, okay, it's whatever. They'll just have it. They don't usually have it, but then we proceeded to have a meltdown in the grocery store when I went the next place. I was like, and it could have, not been directly related to right then, but I was like, we're never doing this
I
again.
know.
But obviously I try to have a loose hand on it so it's not like a restriction, more like,
Right.
when they're older, I can explain more about like, this is why
Right.
why mommy like brings their own sprinkles to the ice cream store.
Yeah.
Just because
No, it's so
I
true.
want you to have these things, but it just, we have to, it's a balance, and I don't want to be like too restrictive and crazy in
Yeah.
nature. But yeah.
Yeah. Where the only thing I'd say I'm really strict about is actually the language around it.
Mm-hmm.
Um, I don't say bad food,
Mm-hmm.
good food, which is like, I know it's really nitpicky, but
No, it
especially
neutralizes it.
like, yeah, and like I had a eating disorder in college. And so for me, this idea of like, oh, that's bad food, this is good food was really disruptive to me. And I know that won't be everybody's story, but we just say like, oh, these are choices that help our body grow. This is a choice that's fun but doesn't help our brain work as
Yeah.
good. Like, and so I feel like that's a really age appropriate conversation. And then Knox, I do tell him like, hey, isn't that crazy? Like other places in the world have this food but with different ingredients, and we would be allowed to eat it there. And inviting him into those conversations. But I hate hearing that's bad, that's good.
Mm-hmm.
Because I don't want my kids to be like, oh, I can't believe that kid's mom would give them bad food. When what if that's all they can afford? I mean, there's like
Yeah.
so many things. We're all just
Mm-hmm.
doing our best, but
Yeah.
yeah.
No, for sure. I've heard it as also, not asking like, oh, do you want candy, but like, do you want a food to make you feel silly, or like if
Oh
it's
yeah.
milk or something, like, do you want something to make you feel strong? And then you can
Hmm.
like obviously age appropriate, like you said at the beginning,
Yeah.
just like move it along of like, oh, carrots have vitamin A, which can help you see, and just
Hmm.
things like that. We did an episode on kids and their bodies, both on sexual abuse prevention and on like body image, and we talked a
Yeah.
lot about that just because, and like growing up, I wasn't even aware of what, like I didn't grow up in a diet home, and when I went to college is when everything kind of shifted. I was like, oh, why do I put sour cream on things? And like, or I'd make a cheese sandwich and I'd have, girls in my dorm and be like, why are you doing that? I'm like, well, it's
Yeah.
just the quickest thing through. And so I do try to be careful about like what I'm saying. And because the weirdest things stick with kids. You're like, how do you
Hmm.
remember that? And just, like you said, trying to have a neutral approach to food, and like what's good,
Right.
is good for us, but to minimize the bad.
Yeah.
Something else that I guard against is just making comments about the kids' bodies and like how much they've eaten.
Hmm.
I will go back if it's not an appropriate time to like be like, don't say that. Like I don't want to make it weird per se and make it a focus, but go back and be like, oh, when this person said this, they were just being silly. They didn't really know what they were saying, and kind
Hmm.
of readdressing. But having twins, it's like a visible reminder of like what people are different, right? They can be
Right.
in the same environment and be different sizes. So we got a lot of different comments, especially when they were smaller and they couldn't necessarily tell that it was a boy and a girl. Not that girls and boys can't be different sizes, but
Right.
I'm almost guarded more against that and what people are saying, just because I've heard so many things and how it can affect later on of like
Yeah.
how you feel about your body and food. And again, we want a, if not good relationship with food, at least a neutral relationship with
Right.
food.
Right.
But speaking of also food, you typically send out a newsletter with meal ideas.
Yeah.
And I love it because you're usually like, this is, and you even posted recently on Instagram, like, this is how I feed my family for like $120 in a week, which is crazy because grocery prices are so insane right now. But
Yeah.
I just love you have a newsletter. And if you are looking for meal ideas, anyone who's listening, you can sign up for Hannah's newsletter. And it's
Yeah.
actually really lovely.
Thank you. Yeah, so it's funny, I'm like coming back into doing that again. So I've just been doing it on Instagram where I'm like showing pretty frequently what I made this week or, in my stories or on my reels. But my newsletter is going to start back up. Rory started a week late because his school didn't have AC. But I'm really excited because that's like one of the things I'm about to start doing again is sending out devotionals and my meal plans and so I'm really excited about getting to do that again for our community. And but yeah, it's expensive to like breathe right now. And so finding like cheap ways of like, hey, here's how to make like 24 muffins for your kids
Yeah.
that last all week and things that are like good for our kids' bodies, but also,
Yeah.
financially helping. So
Yeah. Did you see how it has come to light that the groceries, at least one of them, has come out that they increased the prices just to make up for the COVID, like the money they made in COVID. Like you have to, they like purposely price gouged. Or I guess they
I have
priced
not
gouged during
seen that.
COVID. Yeah. Just because of the
Yeah,
scarcity, supply and demand, which is so, I mean, it's capitalism,
it
which is a whole
is.
different conversation.
Yeah.
But back to happy things. Do you have a favorite meal that you're making right now or food that you're making right now?
Yes. Okay, so we buy a
That
lot of
was
ground
fast.
beef.
Yeah.
So we go to Costco for most of our bulk of
Hmm.
stuff. So we buy ground beef for a really good cost. It's the organic,
Yeah.
free range stuff. Okay, so I do bulgogi. I think that's how
Mm.
we use it.
Yeah, I think so.
But it is so easy, and I make it at least once a week right now because you can do it so many different ways. My favorite, we make it with like brown sugar, coconut aminos. You saute it all up, and then you can put it on rice. You can do it in the ramen noodles with like some broth, and it
Mm.
is so good. And my kids love it.
Oh, good.
And then my kids love cucumbers, so if
Ooh.
I'm ever like none of these other vegetables are working, they don't want to eat them, they will always eat cucumbers, and it's so good with cucumbers. And so they almost eat it like nachos, like they'll have their
Yeah.
cucumbers and then put the bulgogi on top. It's great.
Have you seen the viral cucumber thing where they like
No.
put all the dressing? Oh my gosh, I'll just send it to you. I haven't
Okay.
made it, but it looks so good. But I'm also right now wildly into cucumbers. It's probably because I
Uh-huh.
think they were in season this summer, or in the summer they're in season.
Yeah.
But just I like the Persian ones. Do you have a
Oh,
specific one?
yes.
And you like cut them super super thin, and then they're
Yeah.
cold and they're so good. Yeah,
Yeah. I love
delicious.
cucumbers. Like,
Yeah,
anyway, I eat
yeah,
them all day.
so good. Do you have a favorite restaurant in Dallas, like date night or
Ooh.
Dallas? Where can be closer to you in DFW area? I'll
Yeah.
just
Okay, in Dallas, we went for our 10-year anniversary to Monarch. Have you heard of that
oh,
one? It's
I don't think
newer. It
so.
wouldn't have been here when you lived here. It's on like the top floor of one of the buildings in downtown, and
Oh,
it is incredible. It's definitely
mm,
like a experience. You're gonna spend a
yeah.
lot of money when you go.
What kind of food
So
is
good.
it?
It's like I would say New American, maybe a little Parisian. I'm not really
Oh,
sure what they call themselves, but we had like pasta, oysters. It's kind of like the same menu at RH Kitchen, but like
okay,
fancy.
yeah. Yes, which
Um,
I do actually have here. I do have that
you have a
and
RH. Okay.
yeah.
Those are awesome too. I like this one better. It is like seriously, you're sitting up like on the top floor of this like high rise in Dallas. It's just really cool. And then more local to where we live, I live in Prosper. If down at the Star, there's a restaurant called Lombardi. And we had like a terrible first experience with them, but everyone kept talking about it. But we went like 2 days after they opened. So we gave a little bit of grace. But we've gone back multiple times now. It's so good.
I'm trying to remember because whenever I lived there, that's where I worked
Oh, yes.
for a while. But I know there's a ton of restaurants around that area. Ours that we
Yes.
typically go to when we're in Dallas, we want to do a date night is Town Hearth,
Oh,
which
yes.
is in the design district, which is where we used to live, and we could literally walk to it. It was very dangerous, but that area has also changed so crazily.
Yes.
But that's typically where we go. We'll have to try that out next time we're in town. I know we'll be in town in December for
Oh,
sure.
yeah. Yeah, definitely go. Christmas would be so fun.
Oh, yeah, I bet it'd be decorated nicely.
Yes.
Speaking of date nights, what is your biggest tip for couples after they have kids to help their relationship stay healthy?
Oh, yeah, that's hard. I think first you have to know this is just a season. And then what we've been doing, like until my parents moved up here, they just moved up here. Was it last summer? They moved up here. Maybe it's
I
been two
remember when you
summers.
posted it,
I
but
don't even
yeah.
remember now. It's been my brain is mush.
Yeah.
But once we had Chloe, they moved up
Yeah.
here. And before that, like I don't know what we did. It was crazy, but childcare is expensive, and so we just started doing a lot of date nights from home. And even still, like if my parents can't watch the kids, we almost every single week are doing on a Thursday night because Paul works Sunday through Thursdays, and so Friday is a day off. So Thursday nights, we'll almost always have a date night at home. We send the kids upstairs and we tell them like, hey, we're going to hang out. Like we're going to catch up. We haven't seen each other a lot this week. And they know they can go upstairs and listen to a podcast and go to bed. And we'll make steaks from Costco, which are like so good. Don't sleep on Costco ribeyes are insanely good. And we'll just make steak and talk, and it's fun. We'll watch a show, and it's just, that's kind of like how we've managed because it's just expensive. It's expensive to have a babysitter if your parents can't watch. And
Yeah.
so, yeah, going
No.
out is honestly like maybe we go out once a month, if even in this
Yeah.
season of life.
Yeah. What time do they go to bed? Or do they all go around the same time to bed?
It's like 7:30 to 8ish. We let
Yeah.
our oldest go up to his room, and he has like a story button,
Yeah.
which like plug, they are great. They're these boxes that have like dozens of podcasts and shows that kids can listen to.
It's called a story button?
It's a story button. Yeah.
Okay.
And
Is it like a Tony box?
Sort of, but
Okay.
it looks like a boombox and it works like a
Okay.
boombox.
Okay, cool.
But I believe the owners are believers, and so everything is already filtered for me. It's
Cool.
stuff that I just trust. I literally am like, you can listen to whatever you want because I trust it. And they're about to roll out Bible stories too.
Oh,
And
cool.
so
I'll have to
we
look
just
at
let him
that.
go upstairs and listen, and he can have it on like a setting for an hour, and then that's how he goes to sleep every night. So yeah, that gives us time down here, and they have stuff to do up there, and it works really well.
Did you listen to Adventures in Odyssey?
Oh,
Right.
yeah.
That is like a flashback for me when you said that.
Oh, yeah.
Because I love to listen to. I know you could also get tapes of them. I think,
yeah.
but I would listen to them in the car because it would come on at a certain time on the radio.
We had the cassette tapes for the Fumbly Bumbly Angels, which I can't even remember who made those. That might not have been Odyssey, but I can still remember those cassette tapes.
We also had cassette tapes of Arky. I don't know if you know Arky.
I don't know that one.
Okay, kids. There was another kids songs. It was like Bible songs, but kind of made it kind of rap like. I don't know.
Yeah, yeah.
Anyway,
Oh my
I
gosh,
forgot.
no, I think we had that. I'm trying to remember. Yes, it's all coming back.
Luckily we can get VeggieTales on like YouTube or something.
Yes.
But, I saw you did a plateless spaghetti dinner for your family as the end of summer tradition this year. Do you have any other favorite traditions that you've created maybe around like Christmas or holiday time?
Yeah. So one thing that we implemented a year ago is Saturdays, especially as like a ministry family, are just really sacred to us. And we started doing family movie night, and it is our favorite night of the entire week. Like our kids look forward to it. We make a pallet on the floor every single Saturday. I think we've missed maybe three in a year because it's just like, oh no, that's family movie night, unless we have like an important birthday party to be at or like a wedding. That's really the only thing we'll miss it for. And it has been so fun and honestly changed a lot for us. Like Saturdays are just very intentional. And I think it's done a lot for our family. And we rotate through family members. So from youngest to
Mm,
oldest, every month, each of us gets to pick a movie and then it starts over the next month. So it's been really fun. And then at Christmas time, we do our advent calendar, which
mm,
is really fun. And we look forward to it every year. And this is another way that I make learning about the Bible really fun. And so every day we like pull out a piece. It's a calendar that I had when I was a kid, which is crazy. And so we pull out a piece and then I literally just like off the fly, whatever comes out that day, they hang it up and I'll tell them about whatever it is. And so if it's the donkey, they'll hang it up. I'm like, did you know that like they had to ride the donkey all the way to where the census was for his family? And it's just really cool and we have a lot of fun. And then every day we end it with, so why do we get to celebrate Christmas and get gifts? And then they say, because Jesus is the best gift ever. And
mm,
that's been a really special and fun way. And we've been doing that since Knox was a year old. And so every year we add in a new kid.
I love that. What's your take on screen time? Because you were talking about movies.
Oh yeah. I always thought I was gonna be like a zero screen time type of mom, and then I became a mom, and I'm like, that is really helpful sometimes. We don't have iPads, but our kids do watch the TV during the
Hmm.
day. But then if it's been like an hour, I'll be like, hey, let's turn off the TV and go spend some time outside. Or my kids love Legos, so we'll do Legos. And then we've pretty recently been like pretty strict, no TV, no phones from 5 to 7,
Mm.
which has helped a lot. And we turn on music and cook dinner together. So we limit screen time, but we don't make it this thing of like your screen time's up. We try to make it very
Yeah.
natural of like, hey, you've been watching TV for a while. What's something else that you'd like to do? So that's kind of how we try to
Yeah. I
balance
like that
it.
because it's not like a super like restrictive, like, because
Yeah.
usually, again, same thing with food. When you start to restrict is when it's like kind of can get crazy. What are their favorite shows right now?
We love Spidey's Amazing Friends.
Oh, yeah.
And Chloe loves Fancy Nancy. Which is like, I personally love Fancy Nancy. Like,
And
this is
wasn't
great. I'll
your
watch this.
I actually haven't watched it. I bought, where is it? It's right here. One of the back to school books I bought,
Oh, yeah.
Olive, was like the Fancy Nancy one, and it's so cute because it has like the flaps.
Uh-huh.
But I didn't know there was a show.
Oh, it's so cute.
Oh, I'll have
It's
to look at
definitely one
that.
of our favorites.
Okay,
And we love
we'll have
Bluey,
to.
of course.
Oh, I'll have to keep that in my back pocket.
Yeah.
Do they have a favorite movie they like watching right now,
It
or
kind of
any
just
of
depends on what Chloe's feeling
them?
lately. My sons are very nice and let her choose a lot. We've been doing a lot of Lilo and Stitch over the
Okay, yeah.
summer, but we got really sick of it because it was like every day, let's watch Lilo. So we've been watching a lot of Tarzan
Oh yes,
and
yes. Love Tarzan.
gosh, what else? I feel like those are our main two right now. Oh, and Monsters Inc. We like Monsters
Oh,
Inc.
I need to try Monsters Inc. again. I fast forwarded through like the beginning part,
Yeah.
and they weren't that into it, but
Yeah.
they love Tarzan, Lilo. They like Lilo.
Hmm.
They're really into Tangled right now
Oh.
because
Hmm.
we went to like a birthday party and the theme was Disney, like princesses, and so like the party favor were the gold, the gold books, the
Yes.
gold. What are they called? Golden.
The little golden books. Is that
Yeah, they
what they're
have
called?
the
Yeah.
the gold spine. Yeah, and so
Yes.
one of them got a Tangled one, and so they love to read it. And I'm like, well, let's watch the movie. It
Yep.
coordinates
Yeah.
together.
That's another
Uh,
favorite in our home. That's my
yeah.
personal favorite Disney
Oh,
princess.
really? Ever?
Yes. Yeah.
Well, it is really good. I love Mandy Moore, but I,
Mhm.
I always say Ariel is mine. But that's just
Oh.
like red hair. Until I
Mhm.
feel like they've done a better job of having like red hair, but back then it was like there was no that was like
Right.
the one red hair, which
Yeah.
actually for Halloween this year, Olive is gonna wear my Ariel costume from
Oh
when I
my
was
gosh, from when you
little.
were a kid? Oh
Yeah,
my
and
gosh.
then my mom is making Cypress Sebastian one.
Oh
Gonna
my
be cute.
gosh. That's so sweet.
Yeah, it's gonna be fun. You recently posted that you're getting back, and you actually said it a little bit on here, but you are getting kind of back to a career path like you were kind of on pre-kids. Can we go back and talk about the company that you built and then
Yeah.
sold to focus on
Yeah.
motherhood? You want to tell
Yes.
us about it?
Yeah. So I started the cake media back in like 2018. So I was like blogging. And then after my first son was born, I started working in a local boutique on just Fridays. And I think it was like Tuesdays. And I knew the owner. So she would literally let me bring Knox with me. And I was just like, I just want to get out of the house again. Like, I just like to work. I like to be out. And it was really hard for me to just like be stuck at home. And so I started running their social media because she knew I was a blogger and I liked to do that kind of stuff. And then that was like on the square in downtown McKinney. And so like other local businesses in downtown McKinney were like, hey, who's doing your social media? And I remember I was telling my husband, we were standing at our old house and we were in the kitchen and I was like, yeah, there's like other people in downtown McKinney that want me to like run their social media. Like, no way, I can't handle that. And Paul was like, what do you mean? Like, that's amazing. This is like such an easy business opportunity. And I was like, really? How would I manage? And we figured it out. And so the cake media kind of happened on accident at first. And I got like 3 or 4 clients on the downtown square in downtown McKinney. And we were like, well, I guess this is like a for real company at this point. And so I like hired somebody on, and before I knew it, we had like 15 to 20 different accounts that we were running social media for. And so we would do like a photo shoot once a month that was tailoring the content for the upcoming month, and social calendars we posted for them. We did like everything. It was full media management. And it was a lot of work. And then COVID happened and it was just insane. And I had my second baby during COVID, which was insane. And then I came back to work and was kind of like figuring it out, but it was a lot of work. And I mean, I was working like 15-hour days during COVID because I worked with a lot of restaurants, and COVID was like, we were like flying by the seat of our pants. Like, okay, today we're doing like drive-through meals, and I would have to make content on the fly for like all of these different restaurants. And it's just a lot of work, which honestly, like I thrived. It was so fun. And we doubled our client list during COVID, which was really funny. And
Yeah.
totally an answered prayer from God, because we stepped out of our old jobs like 2 weeks into COVID. And it's like a long story, but we were like, okay, like God's telling us to step out in faith. And so we did. And my company was our income for a season, and we're so grateful for that. But then I got surprise pregnant with Blakely, like very shockingly. I had just had Rory. Rory was like 9 months old. No, when I found out I was pregnant, gosh, I mean, I don't even know. It was like, yeah, he was like 9 months old. And so I was like, this is crazy. I don't know if I can do this. We had just moved. We were like just beginning our first conversation with like seat of pastors about planting Cadence was 4 days postpartum. I guess just it was a wild season, and God gave us a grace for it, and we had to have that income in that season, and I'm so grateful. But then when I lost Blakely, I just like crashed, and like mentally, physically, I've never experienced depression or anxiety like that before, and it was like the worst. It was the worst season. And um I guess like there was COVID, and I had a COVID baby, which was really traumatic and hard. And then he was in the NICU for a week. We just left a job in like all of our community, and we had really good reasons for that, but it was really difficult. And so it felt like this season of back to back traumas, heartaches, disappointments. And then I traumatically lost my daughter. It was just a lot. And I tried to continue my company. But I was not showing up in my home, which is my first priority, like at all. I was truly like licking the floor of hell. And any piece of me that I had to offer was going to sustaining a company. And so it was a major financial hit for me to leave the company, but I was like having panic attacks, waking up in the middle of the night because I knew I was like failing at everything. And so something had to give. And God, it's so funny though, because God knew, like, to really go back. The first date that my husband and I ever went on, he said, if you don't want to plant a church, we really shouldn't go on a second date because I know that's my calling. And I was like, that sounds really cool. And I had always joked I would marry a pastor one day. And so I was like, that kind of adds up. And so we kept dating and obviously like ended up getting married. And so we've always known we would plant a church. And then in 2019, we were given the plant date of fall 2021. And then a bunch of messy stuff happened and we stepped out and we had to decide, like, okay, was fall of 2021 from the Lord, or was it just this like spoken thing from a person? And we really felt like it was from the Lord. And so it's just funny because God knew the exact version of self I was going to be walking into the thing we had talked about doing for 12 years. And it was not the version of me at all that I thought was going to be launching a church, and not who I wanted to be. But it's really funny because now, like, hindsight, looking back, I truly can see one, the ways that the Lord worked in me through that season, and having to lay down this really successful company, even like as I'm walking into this season where I'm like, Lord, it'd be really nice to have that income still. Like, we really need that. But just like, I don't know. I feel like the Lord really humbled me in a lot of ways, grew my empathy. Like, there's so many things that could have never happened if I hadn't stepped into the season that we did in the version of self that I was. And so I don't know, all of that to say, I'm really grateful for the company. And I think it really, I don't know, it was exactly what we needed in a season. And I can see God's hand on that. And it was really difficult to lay down. But I'm excited. I feel like, my youngest just turned 2, and scientifically, your brain takes 2 years to return postpartum back to kind of like level. And I can feel that. And this is my first time in 7 years that I'm not, I have a 2-year-old and I'm pregnant with my next, which is really wild. Like, it's almost like this like intuition in me is like, I could have another. I'm like, no, you don't want another one. Like, don't do it. But it's just funny, you can see that like psychologically at 2 years, like, here we are. I feel like I should be doing that, but it's the first time that I'm like, oh wow, like I really am done. And I know that I want to be done because mentally I want to be able to like be the mom I know I can be. And I just haven't been able to because I've been postpartum for 7 years, in like one way or another. And so I don't know, it's been such a grace. It's been such a great thing. And now I'm stepping into a new season of, okay, like, God, my hands are open. I'm available. My brain is back to like semi-normal. Like, what do you want me to do? So yeah, I'm excited.
So my next question was going to be like, do you regret like stepping away from it? And obviously you answered no. I mean, obviously it was hard, can be hard in the moment, but you don't regret that. This is just a side note and we can cut it if you don't want to talk about it. But I remember when you'd posted something like, I think when you maybe decided to have Knox, and that you'd said like Paul was ready and he was just waiting on you, and you got like horrible backlash from that. Do you remember that?
I remember I got a lot of backlash when I said we are pregnant. I made it to Reddit. You haven't made it unless you've made it to Reddit.
But I just think this is so wild.
That's wild. I kind of think I like got that out of my brain, but I do remember there was
well, sorry, I just brought it back up.
It's coming back up in me. No, I do remember. No. I think that's the hardest thing. Being like a very vocal Christian who's also an influencer, people put a lot of stereotypes on you of like, oh, you must live in an oppressed, almost like the ballerina farm thing that's going around right now. And I believe she's Mormon, but it's the same idea of like more traditional home. Yeah. And people just kind of put these like stereotypes on you that yes, I am a woman, I am a Christian, but also there was like many seasons in our life that I was the breadwinner. Like my husband was still in college when we got married. Like there have been so many seasons where we've passed the baton back and forth. And so even that of like, oh, your husband just wanted you to have babies for him, like is just so like actually laughable to me because my husband is the most supportive, like, I mean, he's literally the reason I had like a 6-figure company was because he was like, you should do that. You can do anything you set your mind to. And I mean, honestly, there's like very private parts of my life. There's people that have nothing to do with us because they've put these like stereotypes on us that are so far from who we are. And you just can't really care. Like,
No.
it's been very sad when it's people you love that have turned on you because of stereotypes, but like at the end of the day, like, I don't know, you have to just keep showing up as who you are and like show people Christ and grace. And if they want to believe you're this oppressed housewife who works all day in the house and labors over the kitchen, like, I can't like speak into that, like
Yeah.
that's like so far from the life that I live, but I enjoy doing those things for my
Mm-hmm.
family, and
Yeah.
people are crazy.
Yeah. One of the things that I've tried to work on is to care less, which sounds obviously insensitive, but it's more so just to care less about what other people are thinking about me or like having to be understood because like
Yeah,
I have this desire to be understood.
me too.
Um, but it just at the end of the day, it doesn't matter.
No, it is
It does
so
not
hard
matter.
though.
Yes.
I connect with that so much. I'm a justice fighter. There's been actually multiple things just even in like the last week where I'm like, the justice in me really
Yeah.
hates this and they need to understand. But there have been moments, I think, honestly, like becoming a mom, and honestly, another thing that just made me like not give a care in the world anymore is having kids and losing a child. I think there's just like this thing that comes up in you of like, man, I can do anything. Like, I don't really care what people say. And there have been multiple times recently where I'm like telling Paul something and he's like, you said that? Like, I'm so proud of you. Because I'm such a like, I'm very like, go with the flow, don't want conflict. But I have also become very like, oh, you crossed the line and I'm for sure going to tell you, because like that just doesn't fly anymore. And there are like literally times where I'm talking and I'll be shocked by myself, but I'm like, you've already committed. You have to go. You have to finish this.
You posted recently about you were doing a course or whatever to get back into that.
Yeah.
Do you have any, and you were excited about it. Do you have anything you're working on, special projects or anything you're excited about right now on your like career path?
Yeah, I think one, just showing up again. I feel like, I was like your very like OG blogger back in the day, posting like multiple times a week and
Yeah.
really loved that. And I have a pretty large email list, and it's just been very like sustain, show up, not a lot of intention other than like, here's my family, love you guys, like linking when I can type of
Yeah.
a situation. And I feel like I'm about to have a season now that Rory is back in or started school and all the things. I feel like I'm gonna be able to show up again with like more intention and how can I like help my people know Christ better? How can I help my people feed their families easier? Like things that I love and am passionate about again. And then also really figuring out where I fit in, working more for the church that my husband and I pastor. You know, like I said, I kind of like went into launch season and the Lord knew that was the version of me that was going to be literally opening the doors to a church. But I feel like I'm stepping into a season now of, okay, there's more of me to show up and give now, beyond just like a Sunday. So
Didn't you just change you had an Instagram account that was like the cake community and now is it She Reads Her Bible?
yep, she reads her Bible. Yeah. So it used to be called, my blog used to be The Cake by Hannah. And then the Cake Circle happened because I had a t-shirt shop that was like so successful. I feel like I've worn literally like 100 different hats, which I feel like you can connect to too. I feel like
Yeah.
we've done a lot of different fun things.
Yeah.
I kind of call myself a serial entrepreneur. But that slowed down a lot when I had my second child. But I
Yeah.
used to have a t-shirt shop. And so we posted my t-shirts and they were like these like seasonal collections that would sell out. And then I still had this account and would do like fun posts over there, started sharing more scripture over there a few years ago, and then it just kind of was dead for 2 years.
Mhm.
And then I felt like I was supposed to go back to that and like really focus on teaching Bible there. Because I don't know, I feel like obviously integrate faith a lot in my personal
Mhm.
account, but it's very like motherhood, outfits, helping moms feel confident.
Mhm.
And of course, that's always through the lens of Christ in my home. But I really wanted a space that I can actually like teach scripture and who God is. And that's all it's for. And so that's kind of more of what that is.
Love it.
Yeah.
There's another question I would ask. Do you have a favorite worship song right now?
Ooh, dang. I really love Tiffany Hudson. So really anything by her. The new Elevation album that came out is
So good.
really great.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's our favorite one they've done in a while. So that's on a lot in our house right now. But also we've been like vibing to like old Hillsong lately. Like old Hillsong Young and Free from like
Yeah.
2012ish has been on a
Yeah.
lot. But yeah, those are always some go-tos.
We go to Mosaic in Hollywood, and they have Mosaic
Yes.
MSC, so who did
Yeah.
Tremble and all that. And
Yeah.
they typically, they'll do some songs, like I forget who they just did a collab with, but they typically on Sundays sing their songs.
Right.
But they've been adding in some of the Elevation, and it's so good.
Yes.
It's
We
so
do
good.
some of Mosaic stuff. We just did Tremble this last week at our church. Yeah.
So
I love
fun.
Mariah McManus's
I know.
voice.
She's
It's so pretty.
amazing. She's
Yeah.
an amazing person, just as an amazing
That's awesome.
person as her voice is. So good.
Yes.
Have you made other decisions that may seem scary? You kind of touched on this, but I know like y'all started your church, you moved. Are there anything that's been on the same level as stepping away from your company, or anything that anyone might relate to?
Gosh, I think outside of our church, which is for sure the hardest thing we've ever done, pretty much we planted through this church planting network, and they really give you like a playbook, and they give you all the things you're gonna face. And we went through like every single one. Like we were like, oh, they told us we would experience that. And I think though on like a more personal level, the last 4 years we've just had a lot of like relational hurts, and some of that's like connected to the church, and you just have to learn to be okay with like not being liked, or be okay with like not being someone's cup of tea. And then also like, like we've had, I want to be like really careful with my
No,
words.
yeah.
But we've had like people we really love really wound my family, and it sucks, and it's really caused a lot of heartache in my family. And I think that's honestly the hardest thing I've ever been through. But it's also made me, I think that's another one of those things that has made me become, I don't want to say I'm callous. At first, like all of the relational heartaches I went through made me become very cynical, very anxious. There was just like a lot back to back that made me very closed off to people. And like one of our worship pastor was standing with us in the kitchen one time, and he was like, you're gonna have to stop that. And I was like, oh my gosh, how dare you say that to me? And he was like, I've seen this go further than where you're at, and like it's very valid, all of the heartache you've been through that's made you afraid of being hurt anymore. Because that's where I was at. I was like, oh my gosh, like if I actually don't think I could physically handle one more disappointment or heartache. And it made me just so like closed off. And you definitely can't be like that in ministry, right? And so I'm really grateful to be called out for that. And so I think I found this really difficult line that you have to teeter of like loving and accepting all, but also being okay with the boundary and saying I'm not going to take that anymore. And it's really hurtful. Like it sucks. Boundaries can be really painful, whether you've placed them or you've had them placed on you. But ultimately, like at the end of the day, learning how to navigate boundaries helps me show up as my best version of self as a worship leader, as a pastor, as a mom. Like it has really freed me up to be who I'm supposed to be in the places that matter. And that's kind of all that matters. And so, that has been literally if I could cuss, I would cuss like the hardest thing. That has been the hardest thing I have ever faced is heartache, disappointment from people you trust so much, and having to be okay with it.
There was a newsletter you did, and it had to have been in 2021 because I know I was pregnant with the twins at the time. And you're going to be like, Lauren, why do you remember that? Or you may be like, I don't know what you're talking about. But you did a newsletter where you talked about being thick-skinned, but that you don't actually need to be thick-skinned because the only thing that matters is what God says about you. Do you remember that?
I actually think I remember you emailing me back and saying, thank you for writing this. I actually do remember that.
But I just like, it's a good perspective to have because like whenever I was pregnant, I was so like anxious the entire time, just being a twin pregnancy, but also like experiencing loss before that. And so I literally like every single night, the prayer that I prayed was like, dear God, please help them be generous and kind and inclusive and have thick skin, but know that only the words that matter that come from you are the ones that matter. I think I said other things too, but I remember I was like, wait, not just be thick skinned, but also be like a soft heart.
We say thick skinned but tender hearted.
Yes. Yes. Amen. This is we're wrapping it up. I know your time is valuable. And I appreciate you for being here. But what is something that's your latest obsession right now, whether it be a clothing item, makeup, a household item? What's your favorite thing right now?
Oh gosh, that's a good question. What am I obsessed with? I just bought a bunch of sweater sets from Amazon that I'm really excited about.
Cute. And how hot is it there today, Hannah?
Actually, it's 71. Thank you very much. Yes, I don't know. That's a good question. What am I obsessed with? I don't know if I have anything. I mean, I feel like right now I'm just like content. I feel like really happy. Which is really fun. I don't know. I feel
you post a lot about, not to tell you what you're obsessed with, but you post a lot about the crunchy makeup.
That's true. I do. I'm very, very thankful for crunchy makeup. I started using that last October. And yeah, I'm wearing the foundation and the blush right now. It's great.
You look great.
Yeah. I don't know.
Okay.
I'm just like,
those are good answers.
I love life. I feel like though, like actually to be really serious though, and like actually make it valuable. I feel like for the first time in probably 5 years since our first like heartache and disappointment, I'm entering into a season where I feel like the Lord has said like it's over. And that is like the most exciting thing. And so right now I feel like I'm just like this like puppy dog that's like, oh my gosh, I think it's over. And I'm so excited. And I feel very just like anticipatory of, right? Isn't that the word? I'm very like expectant of what's to come in this season. And I'm just like really in tune with the Lord and the Holy Spirit of like, what's next? I'm done grieving. Like, help me step into something new.
Yeah. And my last real question before we talk about where everybody can find you and keep up with you is just like, I obviously know your dad, but is there anything else that we can pray for you for or about?
Yeah. I mean, our church as pastors, I think you are constantly like a target for the devil. And so we just pray coverage over our home all the time and over our children. And then my dad, he has stage 4 cancer and that sucks. Don't really have any answers yet, but believing that he's going to be okay and we're going to see a miracle.
There was actually it was Mariah who did it. So if you want to go back and listen to it, but she spoke at church a couple weeks ago and it was about miracle territory. Also, like it was really good.
Yeah.
But yeah, how can we find you? How can we keep up with you? Give us your Instagram. You can talk about your church, where I can find you, all that good stuff.
Yeah, so my Instagram is Hannah MC Morrison, which is for my middle name. Everyone's like, what's Hannah McMorrison? But someone has Hannah Morrison, and I've asked if I can pay them for the handle, and they're like, no. But my middle name is Marie Cheeves, because I could not drop my last name when I got married. I love my last name.
I kept mine too.
Yeah. And then our church is Cadence Church. We're in Frisco, Texas. We meet at an elementary school right now. So if you know of a location that we could buy in Prosper or Frisco, holla at your girl. And yeah, you can sign up for my email list. That's where I do devotionals and I do meal plans and all that kind of fun stuff.
And I'll put all those in the show notes. But Hannah, thank you so much for spending your time with us this morning. We really appreciate it. And thank you for just blessing our day or whoever's listening to this today.
Thank you.
We are thankful for you.
Thank you so much. This was really fun. I love this episode.
I'm so glad you came.
Thank you. Bye.
Boy, girl, mom, and dad. Gotta wash those butts together. It's a trip, but we'll guide you through with tips and tricks for boys and girls too.